London.
And all morning, in honour of International Women's Day, we've been talking to inspirational women who've achieved distinction in various different fields from very different beginnings and origins, very different life stories. We talked to former Pensions Minister Baroness Ros Altman, the businesswoman and entrepreneurs June Kenton, Carla Marie Williams, an ex-youth worker from North London, now one of the most prolific songwriters in the music industry. And my next guest is Nadia Marks. Come and put your face in the middle of the microphone, that's great. She was born in Cyprus but grew up in London. She's a former creative director and associate editor on a number of leading British women's magazines and now a novelist, and a very successful one at that. She works as a freelance writer for several national and international publications. Her debut adult novel, Among the Lemon Trees, was published last year to colossal acclaim, and she has a new one called Secrets Under the Sun, which is out in May. Good morning.
Good morning.
So how old were you when you arrived here from Cyprus?
I just finished primary school, so I was 11. And I was plugged out from the sunny Greek island or Cypriot island and thrown into freezing London.
What do you remember about that? What were your first impressions of London? It must have been a great shock to the system, I would have thought.
So, although it was August, it was still very grey and it was raining, and I just had never imagined anywhere else any country in the world that was like that.
What colour did the country seem? Did London seem to?
Grey. I mean, that's pretty kind of cliche, but it was very grey. There were lots of flowers because it was summer, and I remember Regent's Park with all the flowers, but the flowers seemed sort of slightly dead in colour. Because there was no sun. I don't know why. And then we were plunged into the most incredible winter, that there was snow until March, and it was freezing and cold, and I didn't speak a word of English.
And so when people talk about immigrants, asylum seekers, people who are different from indigenous, people who were born here and have generations of relatives born here, I mean, that's an experience obviously that you have lived and that you can understand. Do you think it forms the way in which you think and the way in which you behave because you've been on the outside looking in?
Yes, I think it does. And I think those first 10, 11, 12 years of one's life are very formative. I know I've lived in England longer, of course, in my whole life, and I love London. I am a Londoner, and I can't say that when I go back to Cyprus I feel like I could live there, but when I go back there I feel something real. It feels there is a certain reality, and to do with the climate, the light, the trees, the landscape. And I think it's those formative years that they do sort of mark you, definitely.
And what was expected of you as a girl growing up in London by your family, by your parents? Were you expected to be a career woman? Were you expected to earn a living, or were they just hoping you'd marry someone nice?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely didn't have too many expectations. Actually, I was listening to the Baroness when she was here, and I really related to that and to you when you said they want, you're a girl and you're just going to get married and you're going to have a family, and that's they were into education, but they weren't into education in the same way for me as they were for my brother, who was expected to go to university, have a PhD, be an intellectual. When we came to England, my father was sent here for his work, and he was sent here with a family, and they were expecting to stay for a few years so that the education of the children. And with me, it was very much, let's get her into a college and she can finish quickly, and then we can all go back home and she can get married and settle down.
And do you remember thinking that was fine, because after all that's what was normal, or do you remember thinking, hang on, wait, actually I'm probably capable of other things? Obviously you want to get married and have kids, but lots of other stuff as well.
Well, yeah, gradually. At the beginning, you just think that's when you're young, that's the expectations. And I do remember being very young and thinking, oh my God, I don't want to have babies because it's going to be absolutely painful. I could hear all the women talking about having babies and how excruciating. I was thinking, oh, I wish I was a man. And then I thought, if I was a man, I have to earn a living. Yeah. So I think it's best to stick to being a woman.
And yet you've been working all these years.
Exactly.
And I've had the privilege of working with you on some occasions of these. I mean, you're a real grafter. You've absolutely slogged it out in a variety of different roles, none of which you could really have expected to be in the end. So what was your training?
Well, I went to art school and I studied art because that was expected that it would be the quick option. Instead of going to university, it would mean doing A levels, doing all the rest of it. It would take a few more years. That was a quick option, and we could all go back to
Cyprus. And yet here you are.
And here I am.
So what happened then?
Well, and then I met a boy there, and we ended up getting married, and look where that ended. And it changed everything.
Like many of us in the divorce courts, yes. But you married a boy from here, an Englishman.
Yes, an English boy, and he actually changed the course of everybody's life, because then my parents decided to stay. My father took early retirement and ended up getting a job here, and the whole change of this is sort of destiny, how everything, one thing leads to another and changes.
When I first encountered you, you were in this impossibly glamorous post as creative director of She magazine. I mean, you're part of Nat Mags, incredibly dressed and kind of in charge with it. You seem to be commanding all sorts of. She's laughing her head off, but that's what it looked like to me anyway. I was just a struggling journalist hoping to write for the magazine, but you were kind of commanding all you surveyed, or at least that's how it looked. How did you get from art school to being creative director? That's a big deal.
Well, I left art school with a diploma. It wasn't even an art degree or whatever, and I just got a chance. I mean, life is all about luck and chance and being at the right time at the
That's what Baroness Altman said.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think what I feel about that, and that goes to everything. So I did that. I got a job in a young women's teen magazine, music magazine, and then a job came on Cosmo, and I was given my first chance as a junior art designer, and then I built up from that. Then another job. So obviously, if you're good, you get promoted, you get given chances.
And how did that sit with the babies and the children and the husband and the family and all the other commitments?
It sat fine. I mean, I was determined. I'm a feminist. I grew up in a feminist era, and I didn't even think twice about it. I thought that you work and you have children, you have a family, and I was earning, so I could afford childcare. I had somebody looking after the kids when I wasn't there, but you manage. And I think,
how did you feel about the being in charge part? Because some women, even to this day, find it very difficult to delegate, very difficult to ask people to do stuff, and particularly very difficult to say, I don't like that, that's not good enough, that's not what I wanted it to be more like this, more like that, this is not the vision I had in mind, or whatever it is. And you were definitely in that kind of a position.
Yeah, I think maybe if you're confident about what you're doing, and if you master if you feel you know what you're saying, then you can do it. I didn't mind, and we were mainly women. So women's magazines that I came from, and the majority were women. So it was a sort of a lovely friendship. They were nice women. We really got on. So I always liked to have men working in the art department, because there was a little bit of a balance. So it wasn't all women having our periods at the same time. So
at least she said that. At least as a woman, I think you're still allowed to say that. As a man, not on the radio, not anymore. Let me ask you then. We hear today that the NME is all over in terms of print and paper. Yeah. So magazines really in trouble at the moment. Newspapers really in trouble. You have created an entirely new career as a novelist. You started writing for teenagers. Now you write for everybody. And your novel, your debut novel, Among the Lemon Trees, absolutely killed it. You knocked it out of the park. You were way up there on the bestsellers list and everything else. And I wonder how that makes you feel about yourself and about your life, that you've managed to achieve this. Now, we haven't talked about your vintage, but I mean,
Oh, yeah. Well, that's very good. I mean, especially at my vintage, I'm at an age where most people think, okay, I've worked for 20 years. I want to slow down now. I want to take it easy. But I think if you've got the energy and if you've got ideas, I think you should go for it. I mean, I was lucky and blessed, and like I said before, it's to do with luck and to do with timing. But so not everybody is given a chance. But I think if you are given a chance to reinvent yourself, to do something new, you should take it and see where it goes. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it isn't. But don't think, oh no, I'm too old, or I've done it, I don't want to do it anymore. I think it keeps you alert, it keeps you, and I think
I mean, I wonder whether you have something in common with all my other illustrious ladies today, which is this very becoming modesty in which you say, oh, it was just luck. And Ros Altman, Baroness Altman, she was at Harvard. She's incredibly bright woman. You were at the absolute peak of your profession. June Kenton was courtier to the Queen. I mean, it's all a massively big deal. And all of you have said pretty much the same thing. Carla Marie also said the same thing. Carla Marie Williams, it was luck. I was just lucky. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I mean, I would go so far as to say that's absolute rubbish. Really, it's not anything to do with luck. It's everything to do with talent, drive, tenacity, and a little bit of being in the right place.
Well, eventually it is. Of course, if you don't have the talent or the capability, then you're not going to succeed. But you do need that piece of luck to be actually presented with us so that you can seize it and do something with it. Because the books, I was a creative director, I was successful, I was obviously quite good. That's why I achieved whatever I achieved.
Nice to hear you say that, actually, because no one ever says that.
No, I mean,
no women ever say that.
Well,
you were good. Of course you were.
I was good at my job. I knew my job. I was, and I could see it because the magazines were successful and they looked good. But the writing, it was something I always liked, I always wanted to do. And I wrote a book, and I didn't expect necessarily to be published. I'd hoped I would be. So being given that chance and having a great agent who believed in me, it was fantastic. So that to me is a piece of luck.
Right, obviously. We're running over, so I've got to bring this to him, but I need to ask one question, even though my producer's frowning at me, so I will ask it anyway. You have been a Londoner since, as you say, you were about 10 or 11 years old, and yet your novels, and there's a new one coming out, and I've been lucky enough to have an advanced copy of it called Secrets Under the Sun. I won't betray any of the secrets, but core, that's all I want to say. But they're set always on an idyllic kind of Cypriot, Greek kind of an island, even though you live here and you've grown up here. Why'd you do that?
Well, I think it's what we said at the beginning, that those early years have really, they've given me that.
They formed you.
Yeah, they formed me.
It's lovely to have you here. Thank you very much indeed for coming in on International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you. Same to you. You've given us a very international flavour here. And you want to have a good read of Among the Lemon Trees, which I enjoyed so much that my daughter and I read it page by page so that we didn't have to wait until the other one had finished. And the new one coming out, Secrets Under the Sun, it's out in May. Nadia, Mark, thank you very much indeed. And we'll be back with you, lovely listeners, straight after the news headlines.